And we're live! Welcome to the Pitch Wars live show, everyone. It is another wonderful week of Pitch Wars, and tonight it's going to be a great show. We have a lot of awesome YA mentors tonight. I'm Nikki Roberti. I'm Brenda Drake's assistant and a YA mentor myself, but I want to introduce all these lovely people to you, and we're going to start with Brianna.
Hi, my name is Brianna Schrum, and I am the author of Never Never. It came out last year, and this year my second novel comes out, and it's called How to Bake Out. So I write fantasy and contempt, and I'm looking for YA fantasy and space opera this year. That's it.
Sorry, that's me. I'm Danny Morin. I am represented by John Cusick. This is my 4th year mentoring. This year I'm looking for pretty much everything except for horror, Western, which I don't know if people are even writing in YA anymore, and like European type historicals. Really, the more current the historical, the better. And that's my choice. So that's it for me.
Hi, I'm Helene Dunbar. I'm represented by Lauren McLeod. I'm the author of These Gentle Wounds, What Remains, and Boomerang, which is coming out next year from Sky Pony. I'm co-mentoring with Beth Hall, who's represented by Logan Garrison. And we're basically looking for contemporary or low fantasy, or also kind of near historicals, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Blackwood, and I am a USA Today best-selling author of The Rulebook. I write contemporary romance, and I'm represented by Courtney Miller-Callahan of Handspun Lit, and I am mentoring YA and new adult this year, and all contemporary and some magical realism.
Hi, I'm Judy. I'm represented by Tina Schwartz of the Priscilla Agency. I write mostly YA contemporary, and this year is my first year as a mentor. And I'm looking for contemporary and low fantasy, basically pretty much anything except for epic fantasy, because I'm really bad at those. I'm done.
It's my turn? Yeah. Hi, I'm Lynette LaBelle, and I'm a freelance editor. I've been doing it for 15 years now. Have some bestsellers on my list, and if you want to see what genres I edit, then go and look at my website at www.labelleseditorialservices.com. I also am starting to break out into my own writing in romantic suspense, and I finaled in the Daphne, getting 2nd place this year and honorable mention last year, and won some other awards as well. And what we are looking for, I'm teaming up with Destiny Cole, and we are looking for fantasy, contemporary, romance, anything dark, thriller, suspense. And we've been adding, every day we're adding more things that we want, like magical realism, fairy tale and mythical retellings, pretty much any kind of retelling there is. What else? I know I'm forgetting some things. Mystery, horror, action, and adventure. So basically, go check out our wish list because we just keep adding to it.
Hi, I'm Sonia Hurdle. I'm read by Rebecca Potos of Reese Literary Agency, and this year is my 2nd year as a mentor. Last year I mentored adult. This year is YA, and I'm looking for contemporary, mystery, thriller, and suspense.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Martin. I am repped by Penny Moore at Fine Print Lit. I write literary contemporary, and this year I'm looking for contemporary and thrillers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Toby Easton, and I'm represented by Jennifer Unter at the Unter Agency. I write YA contemporary fantasy. My first novel, Emerge, just came out this spring. The sequel, Submerge, will come out next spring, and then the 3rd book in the trilogy, Immerse, will come out sometime after that, because publishing. I'm looking for especially contemporary fantasy, urban fantasy. I will do high fantasy. It's not necessarily my go-to, but if a concept really grabs me, then I can totally fall in love with it. Historical, contemporary, as long as it gives me kind of an eye into a world that I'm not familiar with. If it's just straight up contemporary, it's probably not my thing, but I love it if I get a peek into kind of a different society or a different world. I'm not the best for horror or just anything super, super dark. But other than that, I'm pretty open, and you can check out my wish list, tobyeaston.com/pitchwars. Super, super easy.
Awesome. And I'm Nikki Roberti, and I am represented by Susie Townsend of New Leaf Literary, and I am looking for contemporary, sci-fi, historical, mystery, anything but super high fantasy or anything scary. I really can't. I like ghost stories, but they give me nightmares. They literally haunt me, which kudos to the writers. I'm a good writer then, but I can't do it. So as you can see, these people are fantastic, and we're going to be answering your questions tonight. So get them ready and shoot them over Twitter with hashtag AskMentor. Our Twitter captain tonight is the amazing Kate Foster, who is also a mentor. And tonight we're going to start with 2 questions that were sent to me anonymously. The first one is, if you got a clean, error-free sub that you loved but found out the mentee was dyslexic and gets a CP to check manuscript before going on submission, only for punctuation, thus in the 2 months go between edits, emails, etc., there may be some punctuation errors. Would that be a problem for you? I know people who are grammar lovers for whom this would be a huge problem, and I'm afraid there is a general thought that errors are down to laziness. Anyone want to speak into that?
I can speak to that. I actually have a critique partner that's dyslexic, so I see her stuff when it's as you know, she posts first drafts when we do our first round critiques of each other's manuscripts, and I do too. We're just kind of, at that point, we're just looking at story level stuff, and it doesn't matter. I would like to see, at least in your first chapter, that you can clean up a manuscript, whether you're doing that by yourself or you have an editor or you have a critique partner that's helping you, but no, that doesn't bother me at all. It probably helps me to know that that's what's going on, but as an advocate for people with disabilities, having dyslexia is not a problem for me.
Anyone else want to chime in there?
Yeah, I would say it wouldn't be a problem for us either. Again, like anything else, it would be good to know up front, just so we weren't making undue judgments on that. I'm not such a grammar person. Beth, however, is fantastic at it, so she would definitely be an asset to anybody who needed help in that realm.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love grammar, and it's even in my Pitch Wars wish list thing. But as long, like, if there's a reason, just give me a heads up, and that's totally fine and understandable. And I think everybody can deal.
Yeah, I think there's this misconception too. It's like, I mean, yeah, errors can be equated to laziness, but I mean, everyone does have errors. Even best-selling authors have errors when they're drafting. So I mean, if we're conversing and then all of a sudden there's like a typo, I'm not going to be like, oh, really? I mean, when I was a mentee in 2014, I think we were on the 3rd draft with my mentor, and she goes, huh, I just realized instead of publicly, you spelled it pubically. What happened, everyone? Okay. Our next anonymous question that we got was, for mentors who list their religion on their profiles or bios, how important is it that their mentees share their religion? I really don't want to offend anyone, but I also don't want to sub to anyone who would feel weird working with someone who doesn't share their beliefs.
I can take that.
Go for it.
So, for me, basically, your religion is your religion, mine is mine. We just don't talk about it. It has nothing to do with our writing, and we just leave it at home.
I can answer to that too. I was raised Catholic and married an atheist and converted to Judaism. So, it's just, I kind of like working with people whose religions are different from mine because it's a learning opportunity. If it plays into your manuscript, that would be important to know. But the more diverse the merrier as far as this community is concerned.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I need to share the religion of a writer that I'm mentoring. If it's a huge issue in the book, and it's a religion I don't know a lot about, I kind of feel like I wouldn't be able to bring as much knowledge as I would like to the manuscript. But then again, you know, a lot of your readers may not understand a lot either, so maybe that's a good opportunity to point out places where you could explain more. So.
Speaking to that point, so my manuscript was had a Christian main character, and my mentor was Jewish, and it was seriously the best working experience ever because it was set in the South, and my mentor's from Seattle, and so all these different phrases that I thought were common, she pointed them out to me and was like, I have no idea what this means. And it was really the best thing to happen to my book. So that wouldn't be a problem for me either. I love learning about all religions, and I love all people. So, anyone else want to talk about this point in particular?
I'll just say it doesn't matter to me either on either one, both the first one and the second one. I'm very with the flow.
Cool.
So yeah.
Awesome. So our first question from Twitter is from Jamie Beth, and she asked, can someone please clarify the difference between unique hook and high concept? Anyone want to take this one?
I can.
Go for it.
Okay, so high concept would be you can pitch it in 1 to 2 sentences, preferably one sentence. So, for example, Devil Wears Prada meets Die Hard. That's a really bad thing. Really bad example, but that would be high concept, is being able to say it in one sentence what your book is about. And then a unique hook, you said?
Yes.
Okay. For a unique hook, I mean, that would be something that isn't, you know, overly done already, or maybe a twist on a certain trope that's maybe overdone. So just a unique twist that hasn't been overdone or may have not been done before.
Awesome.
I would like to chime in to say that if you have
like to add to that?
I'll try. Meets Die Hard, send that to me, please, because I would actually
Yeah,
like
I'd
that.
kind of like to see that pulled off, so send that to me too.
I mean, that does sound pretty fantastic. So again, guys, if you are watching live, a lot of people are now just hopping into the room to watch. Hello, welcome to Pitch Wars Live. It's so great to see you. Feel free to shoot your questions over via #AskMentor. You can, if you're watching this in the Google Hangout, you can send a question through the Q&A feature. However, if you're watching in YouTube, I can't read the comments till after. So stick to Twitter, because our Twitter captain will field them towards us. So I have a question for you all. And that is, I think, something that a lot of Pitch Wars hopefuls are wanting to know. And that is, what is the most important thing you look for in a submission? And we're going to start with Toby.
I would say it's a concept that really draws me in, because character and voice and things like that I look for in the opening pages, but the first thing I'm going to look at is your query letter. So when I'm looking at a query letter, it's going to be, there's got to be something that just intrigues me about the initial concept, the initial premise. And that's a really personal thing, and that's, guys, why it's super subjective.
Yeah, for me, the most important thing is character. Concept definitely matters to me in a query, but the pages are a lot more important to me. I want to get a sense of your character and his or her voice. That's number one for me.
I would say if I can't relate to your main character, it's going to be really challenging for me to fall in love with your story. But I think even more, so as far as the submission on paper, you know, that would be my most important thing. But for me, the most important thing is that there's a mentee that's willing to learn and open to learning and really willing to work hard over 2 months, because that's what Pitch Wars is really about. So for me, that's more important even than the pages themselves.
I'm definitely all about character and voice. I can overlook some things in the query that might need some work. I'm getting a lot of feedback, sorry. But I don't need to be able to necessarily relate to the character. They don't need to be reliable. But I want a character who intrigues me, that I actually want to spend all the time with to read this book 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I also agree. voice is always going to be number one with me. So I'm looking to be hooked in the first page, either if that's, a character that's really funny, kudos if they are, that's a big plus with me. But somebody that, yeah, I want to spend time reading, so that's really subjective. So yeah, just voice.
Voice is the same with me. And if I like to be able to relate to the character pretty early on, because if I don't care about your character, sometimes I have a harder time wanting to read the book.
For me, it would be voice and premise as well. And I guess I also want to see that you have some understanding of the craft, because if there's craft issues all over, and if there's mechanical errors, then I'm thinking, I don't know if I have time to do this in 2 months. You can edit me later and we can work on it, but I don't know if I can handle that in 2 months, especially because we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth. So those are the types of things that I'll be looking at.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Sorry. The thing that I'm looking for most is going to be voice and a compelling character, and I really don't care if they're likable or if they're somebody that you want me to root for, as long as they're compelling and they have a good story and they're worth following, and you've got a great voice. Pretty much what I'm looking for. Anything else can be fixed.
The most important thing for me is voice. And I'm not saying this to discourage you, but YA voice can be really hard to nail down sometimes. It's something that definitely takes a lot of effort to get down. And if I don't like the voice, it's going to be really hard for me to care about anything else. Like, we can work on the plot and the premise, but I've got to love the voice.
Awesome. Quick technical note, we are getting bad feedback, so we're going to have to switch to mute yourselves until you're speaking. I apologize, guys. Speaking of voice, though, as you can see, that is a huge thing for everyone. We did get a question just now from Remy Gallant. I apologize in advance for butchering people's names. How can you avoid your YA voice from coming across as too young or too old? Does anyone in particular want to take that? Just unmute your mic first and you can have it.
I'll take it.
Oh. Do you want to go first? Is that Sonia?
Yeah. I'll go and then you go?
You can go first. Sure.
Okay. The most important thing, I think, is listening to teenagers, getting involved, like watching movies that they watch, pay attention to their social media, the way that they talk, because I do see sometimes that in YA novels that it will be somebody talking like a 90s teenager, which is, I appreciate, because I was a teenager in the 90s, but since we are writing for teens, it's important to respect the people that you're writing for and take an interest in what matters to them nowadays, right now. That's it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I'll chime in too. I'll chime in too real quick and just say word choice. I think that's kind of like a boil down of what the other mentors were saying. It's just, make sure you're choosing words that teenagers today would say. Totally rad. I'm not sure that teenagers today know the phrase totally rad. So that probably wouldn't be something that they would be saying.
That's a good point. We have another question from Dana Newens. There are different types of fantasy. How would you define the difference between high fantasy and epic fantasy? And I am not a fantasy person, so I have no idea. Who could speak into this?
I will. I've written a fantasy book. It was terrible. But I read a ton of fantasy, and I would say the biggest difference is high fantasy, well, let me start with epic fantasy. Epic fantasy takes place in a completely different world, like Middle Earth. There are different creatures. Brianna really should answer this one. And high fantasy maybe isn't quite as high as epic. I'm doing a really bad job at this. Brianna, just answer this question because she writes fantasy and she knows the answer.
You want to take it away, Brianna?
Yeah. Okay, so I honestly use high fantasy and epic fantasy somewhat interchangeably. I don't think that there's massive difference between the two, but there can be. Sometimes people use high fantasy to describe like high magic worlds, whereas epic involves kind of the hero's journey and a quest, kind of your typical Lord of the Rings style fantasy. I think really both need to feel fairly epic. So that's a hard one to define because I think they cross over so much with one another.
No, that makes a lot of sense. This one I think you all will enjoy. What was your favorite YA book when you were a young or younger adult? Let's all answer this one because I think all of us have those kinds of books. And we will start with Judy.
Why? So, gosh, I would have to say, man alive. Well, for middle grade, it was definitely Harry Potter because I grew up with that and I started reading when I was like 12. And The Outsiders, I think. I didn't read The Outsiders until I was about 17 or 18, but oh my God, I read it one afternoon and I fell in love with it, and I read it all the time still. And that one, it was just really important to me. I love the characters in that one. It was fantastic.
Okay, I don't know if I can remember a specific title that far back, but I will say that there was one series called Seniors that was kind of like Sweet Valley High, but it was a little bit raunchier. So I read those, and I also read this publisher's line called Point, and they had a lot of the darker novels. But something more current, I just finished reading Dorothy Must Die, and I swear to God, I love that book to death, and I'm addicted. I had to go buy the second one right away, and I'm just waiting for it to arrive.
For me, when I was younger, they didn't really have young adult as a category. It was more like you went from middle grade straight up to adult. So I devoured in like 6th and 7th grade Christopher Pike, R.L. Stine. I absolutely loved anything that had like a mystery or a suspense thing to it. And then I jumped right up to Stephen King, Dean Koontz, that kind of stuff when I was in 7th, 8th grade, because they just didn't really have books for teenagers back when I was growing up, and I totally just showed my age there. So that's it.
When I was a teenager, I didn't read any YA. I read a bunch of adult books that I probably shouldn't have been reading at the time. But the first YA book I read that really changed the way I looked at books was Jay Asher's 13 Reasons Why. I read that in my early 20s, and I'd never read a book that dealt with such a difficult topic, such as suicide, in such an amazing way, really. Like, that book made me want to pursue a writing career. And so, and I write dark contemporary because of that book. So that book was really influential to me.
Yeah, same here. I think I skipped right from middle grade to adult when I was in school. I was really fortunate to be in that Harry Potter generation, so I was, 10, almost 11 when I picked up the first book, and kind of that embodied my teen years, so that is a special kind of place in my heart. And I love the Song of the Lioness series. And then from there I jumped right into adult, so Mists of Avalon really stands out in my memory, things like that. And then the first YA book that, again, I read in my 20s, right around the time I kind of discovered YA as a genre and realized that, like, oh, this is what I want to be writing, was Delirium by Lauren Oliver. I read that book, and I understood kind of how intense and complex the worlds in YA could be, and I love the romance element of that book. So, yeah.
So I love Harry Potter like everybody else in the world. I remember sneaking an illicit copy of it with a friend of mine to someone whose parents wouldn't allow her to read it. It was like very rebellious. So I loved Harry Potter. Was in 7th grade. I went from liking it to loving it, and I'm going to copy Judy because it was The Outsiders. I just love that book. It shattered my soul, and I love Dallas Winston forever. So.
Yeah, I'm part of the generation that YA wasn't really a category when I was a teenager. I know that when I was like barely a teenager, what they call tween now, I was reading Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, was really into that. In ninth grade, the book probably like that school-wise inspired me the most would be To Kill a Mockingbird. I've talked about that quite a bit in interviews and stuff on my blog. But I would say that like the book that really made me feel like, okay, maybe I can do this someday was Twilight, which is crazy because I really can't stand Twilight. But you know, from an inspiration perspective, I was like, oh, I can do this. But I was in college, or possibly past college when I read that. So when I was a teen, I would say that maybe V.C. Andrews would be. I guess that V.C. Andrews is now shelved in YA. It definitely wasn't considered YA back then, but V.C. Andrews was probably what I read the most of. I think I read every one of her books.
I also grew up in that time where there was no real YA. I went from middle grade to actually a lot of speculative fiction, Harlan Ellison and Michael Moorcock. I used to put Roger Zelazny quotes on my wall. And then I was an English major in college and didn't really do any reading for fun. But I discovered Melissa Marr's Wicked Lovely series, and that was really the series that kind of opened my mind to what was possible in YA and what YA could address. And that's really what got me back into it.
I also grew up in the Harry Potter generation, so I enjoyed those books. I didn't read a lot of YA when I was in high school. It wasn't really readily available, so really like The Outsiders. I went straight to things like Janet Ivanovich, Charlene Harris. I really liked the normal vampire stuff. And then the first YA that really resonated with me, besides Twilight, I actually really enjoyed Twilight. But I really enjoyed John Green's Looking for Alaska. It felt so real to me. It felt like school. It felt like, my childhood, even though I really wasn't at a boarding school or anything like that. I wish I was. But yeah, stuff like that just really resonates with me. So.
For me, I really loved The Princess Bride by William Goldman, mainly because originally I couldn't find it because I was looking for The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern after watching the movie. But that's because his whole book was a fake abridgment of a book that never existed. And anybody who can, create this elaborate lie, I think is the master. There's actually reports of people trying to book vacations in Florin to see the fire swamp because in the abridgment he talks about the historical whatevers of these real places that actually do not exist, and I just love that. Going over to the hashtag AskMentor, get your questions in. We have a question from Kathleen S. Allen, and the question is, what is your editing style? But let's also elaborate on that too, because I think maybe something worthwhile to talk about is editing versus mentoring. So whoever wants to start us off on that one, does anyone want to talk about how they want to handle being a Pitch Wars mentor? Jennifer.
Okay. Well, hold on, my microphone. Well, first off, I would say check out our mentor bios because I think all of us mention our editing styles in there. But for basics, my mentoring style will be I really like to do 2 to 3 passes. First pass would be kind of general edits, plot holes, characterization, anything major like that. Whereas second round would be more fine-tuning, making sure that everything is consistent, your characterization is consistent, everything. Or some light grammar edits. And you said, what's our mentor style as well?
Yeah.
Well, I really like being a cheerleader. I'm also a teacher, and so my students call me a cheerleader on espresso, and that pretty much describes me. I'm like, I really like to throw out the GIFs. Is it GIF or GIF? I really don't know, but that's a debate.
It's funny you mention that. My husband's a computer nerd, and he just informed me. I think that's ridiculous, and I call it GIF, regardless, because I'm a rebel. Sorry, continue.
So yeah, I really like to be a cheerleader because this industry is really freaking hard. And people, I hate to be like a downer, but people think like this is the hardest step of publishing. It's really the easiest step of publishing, and it only gets harder from here. But you have people in the writing industry who are your cheerleaders, and you need to like cling to them like a barnacle because this shit gets tough, okay? So yeah, just hang in there. We're here for you. Okay, that's it. That's me.
Anyone else want to jump in on there and talk about their mentoring style?
I'll jump in because I didn't put a link on my thing about my mentoring style. Basically, what I do is I do an edit letter that breaks down every character and your plot, and just kind of I make notes on everyone, kind of where I spot inconsistencies and such, and then I kind of send my mentee on their way to do their stuff, and they can email me anytime to ask questions because I have no life, so I am here for them. And then after that, I do a line edit where I just go through and do, check for wonky sentences or, maybe a few misspellings. And I'm notorious for missing words myself, so like the words A is the, those tend to disappear from my manuscript all on their own. Like, I don't know how that happens, but that's basically what I do, and then I'm available, whenever. So that's it.
I can jump in too, and I'm actually gonna call Sonia out on the spot a little bit because she was my mentee. So I start usually like when I'm getting ready to do the edit letter, because I'm hesitant to do that before we get our final picks because who knows if somebody might try to steal you from me, because that's never happened before. So what I'll do is I'll say, here's what I've noticed in your first chapter as far as line edits or patterns, maybe in terms of filter words and things like that. And then you'll get an edit letter from me that covers all the bases, voice, characterization, plot structure. I'm kind of really hardcore about plot structure, so be prepared for some pretty intensive edits as far as plot structure is concerned. And then once you're working on that, then it kind of really depends on the state of your manuscript and how much high-level stuff we need to work on before we get into the line edits. I'll probably line edit your first chapter very thoroughly and kind of give you an idea of things to look for in the rest of the manuscript, and then, not pressure you to get your manuscript, the high-concept stuff or the high-level stuff quickly, because I want you to do the best job on that because that matters more, and then we'll really, really, really polish whatever's going to be in your sample. Is that, Sonia, how it was pretty much?
Yeah, I did like on my third pass, you're like, okay, this is the third time I've read this, and you are still doing this one thing. And your midpoint is
this
still
character.
20. And yeah, very thorough.
And something to keep in mind, guys who are watching, is that every mentor is different. So make sure that if you do have specific questions to that mentor, not pitching your actual book, but about their mentoring style, feel free to @them on Twitter. Not everyone's going to read your book more than once. I'm going to try to. I have a baby this year, which I didn't have last year, so we'll see how that goes. But I usually read twice. But really, it's a dialogue. It should be a lot of fun, and I think anyone who enters Pitch Wars, whether you get it or not, you're going to learn a lot this year. And speaking of which, this is a really good question coming up.
Nikki, can I just jump in on that last one? Is that
Go
okay?
for it.
Thanks.
That's great.
So I'm just going to say that, so Beth and I are long-term crit partners. We've been working together for about 4 years, and we have a very bad cop, good cop style. From us to pick you, we're going to love your book. So my attitude is that you really want it to be better, and that we believe that that book, is really going to shine. So my focus is very big picture and characters and making sure the emotion is there. Beth is an absolute just whiz when it comes to line edits, and she's very rah-rah, and you will know she is in your corner. She's fantastic, and I just kind of wanted to say, so my last year's mentee actually signed with an agent about halfway through Pitch Wars on a very old outstanding query, but in the half period that we went through, I probably went through his book 3 or 4 full times. We changed timelines and structure and really kind of broke it down from the ground up and rebuilt it. So we're going to tailor our approach to what your particular manuscript really needs.
I want to jump in there too. So I'm co-mentoring this year. Last year I did it by myself, but I also did adult. Now I'm doing YA, and I joined up with Destiny Cole. So we're first going to read the manuscript and talk to each other about what we feel needs to be fixed and how we should go about doing it. Then I'm going to write up an editorial letter, send it to the mentee, and then I'm going to go over the big picture things, the characterization, the plot points, the emotion, and all that. And we're going to nail that. And once we're finished with that, we're going to send it to Destiny, who's going to go over and line edit.
Yeah, and I'll jump in too, and just say that for me, I'm really going to tailor it to whatever your manuscript needs. So I'm going to read it the first time and kind of make my plan based on that. But we'll definitely go over big picture issues first and kind of get those really strong before we do line edit stuff. But we will do line edits, guys, because I can't help myself. I'm a detail person, so I'll definitely be kind of doing that with you. Another thing, though, is for me, I'm really big on natural sounding dialogue. And by natural sounding, I mean natural sounding to your world. So that's something that I look at a lot. Also, character motivation and plot are things that I'm pretty hardcore about. So I will rah-rah and cheerlead you and be super, super optimistic because I'm just that kind of person, and I'm only going to pick a book I'm super, super excited about. So I will love it. I will love it, but I will not sugarcoat anything. So, be ready to work.
Speaking of that ready-to-work mentality, that brings us to our next question from Katie Brooke on Twitter, and that is, how can mentees best illustrate that they are willing to put in the work during the sub process? This is a very interesting question because, a lot of people are doing those pimp my bio things. That would be a good place to write about how you're willing to do whatever it takes. But I think it's important to note, if you are entering Pitch Wars, by submitting your book, I think that should be like your agreeance that you're willing to put in the work. I would be very upset if anyone who entered Pitch Wars was not willing to do the work, because Pitch Wars is a working contest, not give me your perfect book and we'll send it off to college. But anyone else want to speak into that real quick? Tabitha.
Last year, I actually emailed a lot of people that I was looking at and just asked them, if they were willing to. And there was one person that said, no, I'm not. And so they were off my list because, like Nikki said, this is a working contest. And like Toby said, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If something needs to change, it needs to change. And it's not because I want to hurt your feelings, but because I want your book to be the best that it can be. And that's what we're here for, to help you take your little book baby and help grow it up. We want the best for you. We don't want to make you mad, and we want your books to succeed. So anything that we're suggesting that you do, it's for the best.
Yeah, and I'll also say when I was in Pitch Wars on the other side of things as an alternate in Pitch Wars 2014, and when I sent my query letters, I included some personalization for each mentor, and in that personalization, I included a sentence explaining how willing I was to work hard, and I feel like that shouldn't be just like a pat response, but if you want to word something that feels really genuine and sincere to you, and include that in your personalization, just to kind of be upfront about the fact that you're willing to kind of put in the work, that's a good thing to do.
I want to jump in there too. When we request your full and your synopsis, we'll probably send a questionnaire at the same time, or we might wait until we've read some of the fulls first. But the questionnaire will have some of those kind of questions. We want to say, okay, look, these are the things that we find really need reworking, and that might mean cutting some characters. It might mean cutting some chapters. It might mean really changing the plot around. I hope it doesn't, but it could mean that. So if it's something really big like that, I'm going to ask you first, look, this is what I think you need to do. Are you okay with that? Because this is still your story, and if you're not okay with that, then I need to know now, because I need someone I can work with, and if we don't agree on the vision of the book, then we're not a good fit.
Well, that's very true. And the questionnaire thing, that's super smart. I totally forgot about that. But when I was a mentee, my mentor, Rachel Lynn Solomon, who's awesome, you should submit to her if you're not going to submit to me, she had sent me some questions that were pretty big, like, oh, are you willing to delete this character and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I actually got really excited by that. And maybe that's not your thing. You won't get excited by people saying death to this character you like. But, I mean, start mentally preparing now, because you're going to get questions like that going in. Anyone else want to touch on this before we go to this really fun question we just got?
I'll touch on it real quick. I will say that Danny was my mentor, and she didn't pull any punches with me. She didn't sugarcoat stuff for me. She told me straight up what was working, what wasn't working, what to do to fix it, and that's what made me a better writer. Like, I came out of Pitch Wars, completely changed the way that I approach storytelling as a whole, and that's how I want to work with a mentee, somebody that wants that type of change, somebody that's almost there but is missing a few key things. So I definitely am going to be sending a questionnaire as well, and just want to make sure that whoever I work with does want to put in the work and does admit that, yes, they love their manuscript, and I love their manuscript too because I picked it, but there are things that can be improved. That's it. That's all. Fun question now.
Awesome. Okay, so I just realized this time has been going super fast. There's only 20 minutes left of the show, everyone. So quick, get your questions in. #AskMentor. We're not going to be able to get to all the questions live, but we will be able to go back and answer you on Twitter, and other mentors who aren't on the show tonight will also be able to answer you there as well. So get your questions in, and if you haven't already, go check out your beautiful Pitch Wars swag at Writer's Life Apparel. This is not a commercial, but really it is, and 30% of the proceeds go towards helping the Pitch Wars community, so go in and get your shirts. It's going to be awesome. New designs are coming out early August, so keep an eye out on that and go check out Writer's Life Apparel. So we're going to all answer this next question. This one's pretty fun. Jamie Stewart asked, in 3 words, what would your dream submission in YA be this year? And we are going to start with Helene.
Of course you are. Intense, complex, and unexpected.
Okay, I can't think of just 3. Okay, funny, swoony, and heartfelt.
I think mine would be dark, emotional, and beautiful.
Mine would be voicey, beautiful, and kissing.
Oh, I'm going to steal voicey because that's a really good one. So voicey, mysterious, and heartbreak.
I'll say girls kissing a lot. That's it.
I guess I'll jump in. I'll say all the feels. I want to laugh, cry, and think it's better than cats.
I'll jump in. So mine would be dark and passionate with teeth.
Did everyone go?
No, I didn't get to go.
Okay.
Voicey, fast-paced, and different.
Ooh, I like that. This is actually harder than I thought it was when I first read it. I'm going to say funny, heartfelt, and zany, because I like a little weird. So anyway, we are going to also take another fun break, and we're going to play Date, Marry, Kill with your YA mentors. So this round of Date, Marry, Kill is going to be, would you date, marry, or kill Ron Weasley from Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games, or the Cat in the Hat from Dr. Seuss? And we are going to start with Brianna. Or we might start with Danny.
Okay. Date, marry, kill. I would date Katniss Everdeen because I think killing her would not work. I would marry Ron Weasley because I need humor in my life, and I guess that means that I would kill the Cat in the Hat, which is horrible. But that's what I'd have to do. Sorry, Cat. Poor kitty.
And actually, we don't all have to answer this because I think it might take the rest of the time. So if anyone wants to jump in and date, marry, or kill someone.
Oh, I really want to answer this.
Go for it, Tabitha.
Because I'm also going to murder the Cat in the Hat like hardcore. He is dead. I'm gonna date Ron Weasley because he's a little needy, and that's not like a long life-term commitment. I'm definitely gonna marry Katniss Everdeen, and it's gonna be like a really interesting life that we have together.
I think my answers would be exactly what you just said, because I mean the cat is really creepy and he like is a danger to children. So, anyone else have a preference on who they'd marry or date or kill? Nope. Okay. We only have 15 minutes left, and we have a great question from Angela. In terms of voice, are there any you're particularly drawn to? Snarky, introspective, shy, cold, etc. And that's from Angela on Twitter at FreePaperclips.
I'll
Who
jump
would
in
like
on
to
this
take
one.
this one first? Go for it.
Yeah, I'm especially drawn to Witty. I love Witty. I love Austen and Oscar Wilde and all of those things. There's some more information in my wish list. But as long as it's a unique voice, as long as it fits your world, then I'm gonna be drawn to it. There just has to be one. So as long as it fits with your story, then it's gonna be great. But yes, especially Witty.
I'll chime in if that's okay. I would also really like witty, or I really like funny voices, snarky, anything like Veronica Mars type voice. I'd kill for that. I really love good banter. So anything that's or near something like that. But definitely snarky, witty, great.
I'd like to jump in there. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter about what is voice and how do we find it and all that. I'm not going to get into that now because that's a long conversation, but I just wanted to say one of the things I'm looking for in voice is I want it to feel real. When I'm reading this, I want to feel like I'm reading something from a teenager. I don't want to feel like it's an adult writing a teenage novel. And so that could be witty, that could be snarky, that could be creepy dark. I mean, it doesn't really matter where you go with that as long as it feels real.
Well, I want to jump in and add to what Lynette said, because my biggest pet peeve is when I can tell an adult is writing this. Like, I just read a book and I can't remember what it is, and I wouldn't say it anyways, but it was very obviously an adult writing. I mean, at one point the character said, "Gee golly," and I was like, oh shit, I have gone like 25 years back, and I didn't want to. But I love snarky voices, but honestly, if your voice is true to your character and I'm just like drenched in this voice, it doesn't matter what it is to me as long as it is your character, like 100%. That's all that matters to me. So.
I'll piggyback off that too.
I really agree. I want a voice that feels real and that can feel raw and unexpected. Like my voices is Maggie Seafader. And like she has a line in the Dream Thieves that I just finished that says Ronan had molten eyes and a smile made for war. And I was like, a smile made for war? My mind is blown because I never would have described a smile that way. So I like the reality, and I want to feel emotion, and I really like unexpected things in a voice.
I'll jump in too. I think that we're just particularly where snarky is concerned, because I think we see a lot of that or at least in the past I've seen a lot of that in submissions in YA, or at least in Pitch Wars. I think your character needs to have a reason for being snarky. If they're bitter and sarcastic and their life is pretty darn perfect, and they're in this fantasy world where snarky doesn't really make sense, then snarky is overplayed. So I think it really needs to fit your character's situation. I love humorous voices, just really kind of flowery voices like what Brianna was describing. But it really needs to make sense for the world that you've created.
I really liked what you said there, and I want to piggyback off of you all too, and add. I think too with voices, sometimes voice isn't always the main voice. To me, because I really love dialogue. I'm a dialogue junkie. I want to be able to play the game with your manuscript where I can pick a line out of anywhere and figure out which character is speaking. So, don't just develop your main voice, develop all the voices in your book. That's the main thing. It doesn't matter what kind of voice. I just want them all to be different. And we have one last question from Twitter. That's all we have time for tonight. And then we'll ask one more that I think y'all will enjoy. But this one's from Christina Fritz, and she asked, will not having a diverse book count against us? Should I pick a mentor that doesn't mention it over one that does? Does anyone want to speak into diverse books?
I can start with this one. I listed on my thing that I was fine with, diverse themes or anything like that, but that if it comes down to it and there's a book that has a lot of diversity or there's a book that has a little bit of diversity and I like the one with the little bit of diversity better and I feel like I can work with that better, then I'm not going to take one that's diverse if I feel like I can help the other one better. But I don't want to say no to diversity either because there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm all up for that, but I'm just saying is that when it comes down to it, that will not be my defining factor. So if your book does not have a lot of diversity in it, that's okay with me. But if it has a lot of diversity, that's okay with me too. It's it's not that big of a deal. I don't care about race or religion or anything like that as long as I can connect with the story and I feel like I can work on it.
I want to jump in there. We're open to diversity, but that doesn't mean we have to have it. So we're just kind of leaving it open, and if the book has diversity and we love it, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I don't want you to feel like you have to make your characters become diverse so that we'll pick you. You can't all of a sudden have a white character turn black and say, yay, I have a diverse character. It really has to fit with the story and feel real. So as long as it feels real and we like the story, great, we'll grab it. Otherwise, if you don't have diverse characters, that's great too, because we love everything. Well, not everything, but we love those.
I'm going to jump in on this because diversity is something that's important to me, but a lot of people think that diversity is just limited to just race, and I would like to see characters that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. I'd love to see neurodiverse characters, LGBTQIA characters. Would really love to see some A characters because I don't feel that there's enough in there out there right now, but for me personally, that is something that's important, and that is something that I'm looking for. And if everybody is, white, straight, middle class, non-disabled, it's probably not going to be for me. And that's just, me being honest.
I'll jump into market-wise. What I recently heard from an agent was that if your characters in your entire manuscript are upper middle class or upper white class, Caucasian, that wasn't really selling well. So from a marketability standpoint, I think that's something to consider. But what's most important for me is that it's organic to your plot and organic to your characterization in the world you've created. Because I had a former mentee who had his manuscript set in a juvenile justice setting, and I couldn't tell who any of his characters were, what their ethnic background was, what their sexual orientation was, and to make them seem homogenous like that didn't really make sense, but it wasn't something he had done intentionally. It was just something he hadn't really thought about. And so that was something we worked on together. So if it's not present and it needs to be present, that's not a deal breaker for me. That's something I would be honored to work on with my mentee because diversity is really important to me. But if that's something that needs to be there and isn't, that's not a deal breaker for me. That's something I want to work on with you.
Awesome. Anyone else want to speak into diverse books and diversity?
Oh, I do. So for me, I asked for diversity in my wish list, and I'm just doing sci-fi and fantasy. So, if you have a world where every single character in your world is white, straight, cisgender, abled, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to say that's weird to me. That's in the entire fantasy world, So for me, that'd be something that I would question. Some level of diversity for me is important in these worlds that you craft.
Awesome, and that brings us to our last question of the night. And whether you get into pitch wars or not, what is the number one piece of advice that you mentors have for writers trying to make it today? And we're going to start with Brianna.
Number one piece of advice is to just keep going and to read a ton. Read in your genre, read out of your genre. For me, the way that I learn the very best is by reading stuff that's done really well, and I want to replicate that. So my biggest piece of advice is don't stop writing, and really importantly, don't stop reading.
My biggest advice would be to have humility I feel like there's always something that can be learned in this community. Nobody, even like best-selling authors, knows everything about everything. You know, some people get lucky and sell really on, and others don't. And it's just you always keep learning. You always keep bettering your craft. So coming into either pitch wars or even just querying agents or going on submission, going to a conference, it doesn't matter the setting, go there with an openness to learn, and you're more likely to actually better yourself as a writer.
I'm going to echo what Brianna said about read everything you can get your hands on, but also don't assume that not getting chosen to be a mentee is the end of the road for pitch wars. There are a lot of other wonderful writers out there that you can partner up with and learn from. I know a lot of people last year, found their new CPs, from the pitch wars boards. So, just because maybe you're not the one chosen by a mentor doesn't mean that you're not going to get a lot out of this.
My advice would be to read, like everyone else has said, so continue to read, and also hone your craft. That's the best thing you can do for yourself, is to keep working on your craft, whether that be joining organizations, like if you write romance, join Romance Writers of America or Squibby, you can join that. Read craft books. Save the Cat is a really great craft book if you want to know about plot structure, and then get critique partners. That helps hone your craft as well.
Yeah, going off kind of what everyone else is saying is, I've learned a lot just from reading books, and I also feel like you should never stop trying to learn when it comes to writing, because I feel like writing is one of those professions where you can never actually not learn anything new. And I feel like, too, someone mentioned earlier in the chat to listen to real teens, and I feel like no matter what you're writing, like if it's middle grade or YA or adult, that it's important too, to make it sounding realistic, is to study other people and how they interact, and also to think about how you interact with other people, because when you talk to people, you don't use some of the words that you might use in your writing, and that's another thing that I found useful when I'm talking to editing clients, is to tell them, would you actually ever say this to someone? Would you use those words? And that kind of helped them understand.
My advice would be, don't let life get in the way of your writing time. So you might not always have blocks of time where you can write, and that's okay, because everybody has their own routines. So then you have to be creative, and hey, we're creative people, so we can do that, right? So you want to be creative and find little pieces of time in your life, in your day, where you can write. For example, when I go to the gym, I do the big boy workouts. So I'm pumping iron, and I need to have 2-minute breaks between sets. So, I'll be on the bench press, I'll do my set, and during my 2-minute break, I have my notebook there, and I'm either writing, or I've printed off some pages and I'm editing, or I'm plotting, I'm brainstorming, I'm doing something with my book. Oh, my 2 minutes is up, back to doing some more workout, now my set's done, go back to the writing. So it's just one way for me to make sure that I get a little bit of writing in when sometimes my days are just like crazy busy.
For me, I would say my biggest piece of advice is don't compare your journey to anybody else's, because everybody goes at their own pace, and this isn't like, publishing isn't a race. I sent my first query back in 2005. I signed with my agent in 2014. This is not something that happens overnight for a lot of people. And I know that there seems like there's a lot of success stories and overnight success stories out there, but I guarantee you that behind those overnight success stories, there's like 10 unpublished manuscripts right behind them. So just, be you, and be proud of the accomplishments that you make, and be proud of the little steps that you take. And that really rhymed. Didn't mean to do that. But, just take a lot of pride in the things that you accomplish, because we don't get a lot of wins in publishing, and you should celebrate the ones that we do.
Well, everybody said some really great things, so I want to give my piece of advice to the people that are watching this that will not get picked in Pitch Wars. Don't disappear from this community if you're not picked. you're going to be a little jealous. That's just normal. But, you know, be happy for the people that are picked, and you're going to find people that are going to be your critique partners and friends for life. And these people are going to be there to cheer you on when you do make it. And, you know, like Sonia said, this is not a race. You know, I wrote 5 books before I got an agent. I've had 2 go on sub, switch to agent, and I still don't have a deal. Like, it's just the way that it is. There are overnight successes and there's not. We're all in this together. You know, we're all, you know, want the deal. So don't disappear if you don't make it. These are your people. They want to be here for you. And, you know, just stick around and use these friends to your advantage, because we want everyone to succeed. So.
Yeah, and to build on what Tabitha was just saying, I'll say as somebody whose debut just came out this year, and I'm in a debut group, the people in my debut group, a lot of them are people that I met in Pitch Wars in 2014, and a lot of those people were not chosen, and their debuts are still coming out. And I remember we were all swapping queries, and I remember reading their original queries, and some of them were fantastic, and their pages were fantastic, and their mentor just wasn't in that group. And so a lot of the debuts were people who were in Pitch Wars, and a lot of them were not, and their books are all coming out. So if you're not chosen, please don't let that be, you know, license to give up or even to get that down on yourself. Just realize that just like with agents, your agent might not be in that particular group, your mentor might not be in this particular group, but hopefully we are. We're all really, really excited. And I'd also like to say that because you're at the stage when you're getting feedback from people, keep in mind, like, let all feedback sit, guys. Really take time with it, and look for the overlap, because just because someone says something to you doesn't mean that that's the thing that your story needs. It might be off, maybe they don't get it, but maybe they really do, and you're going to need to kind of sit and take time with it and look for the overlap in multiple people's comments.
And I said this on an earlier episode, but I mean, all your advice just inspired me, and I feel like I have to say this because I feel like it bears repeating. The writer journey will always be hard, no matter where you're at in it. Writing your first book is hard. Writing your second book is hard. Querying agents is hard. Getting an agent is hard. Working with an agent is hard. Going on sub is hard. Getting your editor and working with that editor is hard. And then going on publishing and then marketing it and then starting it all over again. It's going to be hard. I mean, I have a friend who has a multi-million-dollar best-selling author friend who lives on a mountain by himself because it's hard. And I have a friend, it doesn't matter how rich or successful you are, it's just going to be that way. And that is why you do need your tribe. This is a hard journey. It's a worthwhile one, especially if it's, you know, your biggest heart's desire. And that's why we're here for you. And that's what Pitch Wars is all about. So, you know, get plugged into the community, make friends, and we want to be there for you because we feel it. It's hard. It's going to be hard on you, and we're going to support you every step of the way. Well, thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. This was awesome. I feel like I learned so much, and I hope you did too, those who are watching. There's going to be more Pitch Wars live shows this week. Feel free to join us. If you came in at the tail end and missed a lot, it will be live on, well, recorded on my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, shoot it over at Ask Mentor on Twitter, and we will try our best to answer. Thanks so much, and may the pitch be with you, everyone. Have a good night.